right, well, today's the day. This is officially part one of the B16A swap into my 1989 Honda CRX Si. It's been long enough. I've done some engine prep in other videos. The D16 is ready to come out. I took the car to a service center last night and got the AC system evacuated properly so that R134 refrigerant isn't vented into the atmosphere, which is actually illegal. So that was taken care of properly. It cost $80. Really surprised it cost that much, but you know, it's done. That was for me ripping the Band-Aid off to get this engine swap really started. I spent a lot of time and effort doing the AC system and getting it all up and running. Did it all myself, pieced it all together from parts on eBay, junkyard runs, and just buying new components. So the AC system is now officially evacuated and ready to start coming out. So I am going to take some time, photograph as much as I can where vacuum lines are going, where connectors are going. I think this swap is fairly plug and play. The vacuum system is the part that I'm most worried about. So I'm gonna start there. And I think first thing to do is to break the axle nuts on both wheels before I get the car jacked up. Okay, as you can see, the car has the center axle nuts broken loose with a breaker bar and a 32 millimeter socket. That was a pain in the ass. If you have an impact gun that can handle that big, I would say go ahead and use it. I used the 2.5 foot breaker bar, and this one, especially on the driver's side, super killer. I finally kind of wrenched my back, threw my body weight into it. It broke free and I tumbled backwards and fell over. So if that's what you hear on the video is me moaning, it's me falling flat on my ass in the concrete in the garage. Car's jacked up, it's on jack stands. I put an extra one back here just for safety. It's gonna be up here for a couple of weeks. I'm not gonna get to this swap all in one weekend, that's for sure. And I chalked the rear tires. So that's the first step. Break the axle nuts, loosen your front wheel lug nuts, jack the car up. Next step is to disconnect the battery and pull the hood off so we can have room to pull the engine in and out. I'm gonna start with taking the hood off first before I do anything in the engine bay. It looks like to take my hood off, I am rocking these pneumatic hood actuators, just some kind of cheap Amazon aftermarket part. They even have like a super sweet carbon fiber print on them. These things are great. It lifts the hood up and down, totally supports the weight, and I don't have to worry about bending my hood out of shape by using the hood prop, the way I'm hood prop. But let's start by getting this hood off. First step, I'm gonna have to disconnect the windshield washer fluid line, and then I'm going to be removing these two, looks like 12 millimeter bolts from both sides, and then lifting the hood off and setting it aside for safekeeping. Okay, so the hood is off. That's definitely a two-person job. You saw me struggle with it a little bit there, and I rested it on the pointy ends while it was up on the hood crop, and it was a little sketchy trying to unbolt that while also supporting it. Definitely bring a friend to help you take your hood off. I'm just kind of storing the hardware with the pieces as I take them off the card so I can remember to put them back on correctly later. Battery removed. You can see my mismatched battery tray color there. Early on when I bought this car, I noticed the battery tray was really rusted out, and it was rusting the interior of the engine bay where it was contacting. So I pulled the old one out. I got a new one off of eBay, which was painted red. It looked fine, and then I just kind of primed the wall of the interior engine bay. Part of what I'm hoping to tackle with this project is once the D series is out, I would like to kind of prep and clean the engine bay and maybe even give it a coat of paint so it looks all nice and minty fresh. With the battery removed, I just like to keep the nuts and bolts along with the hardware that they came off of. So I'm just gonna kind of start storing this stuff and stacking this on some shelves I have in the garage. Nothing fancy. And the battery, I'll probably hook up a battery trickle charger just to keep this thing topped off, because just in case I run into a problem with the swap, you don't know how long the battery is going to be sitting without getting a charge. So on to the next part, which is going to be removing the air intake. And after that, we'll jump into getting all the fluids out of this, draining the coolant, transmission fluid, oil, all that good stuff. So I removed the intake filter and snorkel. And I also went ahead and removed the battery tray so I could get a better look at kind of where I left off with this interior engine bay repair before. It doesn't look like any rust is coming through. Primer still there. You can see how filthy dirty this engine bay is. I'm really excited to get in here and clean most of this stuff. There you get a first look at the transmission side mount, which is going to be exciting to start taking this stuff out soon. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to photograph this engine bay really well before I disconnect any wires, any vacuum lines. Kind of just look things over and make sure I know what the hell I'm doing. And then I'll get to draining all of the fluids. I have a empty cardboard box. I'm just collecting all the parts I removed from the engine bay. This will probably fill up pretty quick, but I'm also just kind of labeling my stuff. Battery tray, airbox, snorkel. With all the bolts I removed, so I don't lose them, so I know where they go when I put them back in. So we're gonna start by pulling out this oil drain plug, and we've got a box set up here to catch the oil. We're gonna start taking the fluids out. We'll do the oil first, move on to the coolant, and then do the transmission fluid after that. Look at that, I made a huge mess. How did I even do that? The oil is out of the car now. I'm gonna clean up whatever this is, and I reinstalled the oil drain plug just so we don't get any more drips, but that should do it for getting the oil out of this thing. Now to get to the coolant drain plug, we've got to remove some of these body panels. Along here, there's 10mm bolts holding them in. There's a couple of plastic clips that you want to be careful and try not to break when you take these out. Now with that body panel removed, we can come over here and look, and we should see the radiator drain plug right here. It's this little white plastic piece. Just need to get a catch tray set up, and then you can unscrew it. I like to leave the top of the radiator sealed because that'll cause some suction and let the fluid not drain out as fast the second you open up the bottom of it. But once that bottom one is open, you can come up top, open this top cap, and it'll start flowing a lot faster to empty it out. Now it doesn't actually come out of the white, this doesn't come out fully. I think there's a little hole right here where it should start spilling out of. So, slow drip. It's a little steadier now. I'm going to go up top and I'm going to open up the radiator fill cap. Okay, the last thing to drain here is the transmission fluid. This is the drain plug, and this is the fill plug. If you take your passenger side front wheel off, you can get to it a little bit easier. So first I'm going to undo the fill plug. so it doesn't create a vacuum when I open the drain plug and drain it into my catch can. Well, today I'm at mechanics, because the car is jacked up lean towards the incline towards the rear. That feels like something the four-wheel drive ratchet to the Thank you. Okay, we've drained the oil, we've drained the coolant, we've drained the transmission fluid. The transmission fluid, I was not expecting it to spew out of both the fill plug and the drain plug like it did. I completely forgot that because the car is jacked up and leaning back, I should have leveled it out and jacked the rear up as well to even out those fluids. But I had a catch can, I put a tarp down to keep all that oil and grease and stuff off of my garage floor. So I guess that's not the final fluid we need to get out of the car or out of the engine before we start disconnecting things and pulling it. The fuel, there is a service bolt on top of the fuel filter right here. It looks like it's a 12 millimeter bolt that needs to be loosened about one full turn to relieve the pressure from the fuel system. I'm going to place a rag or a towel over top here so that when I relieve that pressure, fuel doesn't spray in my face and all over the place. Well, I loosened the service bolt on the fuel filter. It's this top one. When I first unscrewed it, the entire banjo bolt that it's bolted into loosened up. I didn't hear any pressure release. I'm surprised. I was driving this car just a couple of hours ago before I brought it into the garage and started tearing it down. So I tightened it back up again to make that banjo bolt seat, and then I put a wrench on either side of this banjo bolt, which I should have done in the first place, and then used my socket wrench to loosen that top bolt. So it's loosened. I loosened it a full turn. There should be no pressure in the fuel system now. I think this next part's going to be a little tricky to film, so I'll set the camera up at a kind of bird's eye view. But I think I'm going to start going through now and just disconnecting all of the engine harness connectors from the electrical system for the car body harness going into the firewall. So starting to separate this entire unit from the chassis itself. Okay, let's do a quick little update on where I am with this project because things are getting a little messy and I like to keep them a little cleaner than this. I've taken out the radiator and my low pressure AC line. I've taken out the radiator fan and the AC fan. Things are starting to clear up and make some room in here now. Trying to figure out what I can keep and what I actually need to remove. I'd like to not take this AC line out again just because it was a pain in the ass and you have to take the bumper off and run it across the front. So I'd like to leave this one here, but it's so flimsy. If this gets damaged at all, I'll have to find a replacement, and it wasn't cheap. So I may disconnect that. I still need to remove this AC line. I'm going to go ahead and pull the AC compressor off, and then I'm going to continue removing the radiator line and the heater, the lines running through the firewall to the heater core. And slowly but surely, vacuum lines will come off, and then this thing should be disconnected. All right, I've continued working in the meantime. I've realized it's kind of impossible to film every single little step. I'm wrestling with some of the stuff in here, especially, in the back of the motor, trying to get some of these heater core coolant lines to disconnect from the firewall. Those were a pain in the ass. I removed the AC completely. I got rid of the high and low pressure lines that run through here. Right now, everything in the engine bay, I think, is disconnected except for the vacuum lines. I've disconnected the fuel line from the fuel rail. I've disconnected all the radiator hoses and gotten those out. And I've disconnected the VSS cable, the vehicle speed sensor, speedometer cable, and yeah.